Wow. Miami Hurricanes rumor mill has been working overtime for the past 24 hours. Are the Canes really about to lose Tyler Van Dyke?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, your host. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Let's cut to the chase. Reported by Footballville and seems to have certain confirmations over the last day that there's some buzz around Tyler Van Dyke possibly hitting the transfer portal, and the destination that keeps getting brought up are the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, guys, for a number of different reasons, I do not expect Tyler Van Dyke to leave, but I do think there actually is legitimate smoke behind what's going on behind the scenes. I do think maybe the situation is getting blown out of proportion, but I definitely think that there is something there. But during his time at the U, Miami has shown Tyler a lot of love. They've shown him love this offseason. You know, he is one of the leaders on this team, which is another reason why it would really be tough to lose Tyler if it does come to that. And let's also consider he just learned another playbook. Just learned what would this be, his fourth playbook or third playbook in the last 4 years he's just learned here. And then you're talking about maybe hitting the transfer portal, going somewhere else and starting that whole installation process all over again. And then the other part of it is, guys, since he is definitely wanted by Miami, I think they're going to do whatever they can in conversations that they're having behind the scenes to convince Tyler not to leave. So I still expect Van Dyke to stay. I think there is a little bit of smoke behind this. And boy, I wanted to bring in our good pal, who's as well connected as anybody in this community, Larry Blustein, recruiting expert, South Florida high school sports, 560 WQAM, has been following Miami since I think before they were even throwing up the U. Blue has been all over Miami. Blue, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. A lot of busy things happening this time of year. You end up with one spring in college, and you start another one with the high schools where the college coaches get to go out. And, a very exciting time, and have an opportunity to, have touch base with a lot of the kids who Miami's recruiting. And talked to Judd last night. We're going to have him on the show next week. Talk to him a little bit. Same thing with Chris Humphrey. Going to have an opportunity to have him on the show this evening. And it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, well, and very, very exciting. And I know fans are freaking out about these Van Dyke rumors. And I want to remind people that this kind of stuff, it's just the reality of college football when you start to hear these rumors, because the transfer portal basically creates free agency. And so you not only have to recruit future players, you've got to always be recruiting your own players to convince them to stay. But Blue, from a Van Dyke Miami side of it, it would be a curious thing, because, you know, he just got through this entire spring period learning a new offense, and he seems actually pretty advanced with his own installation of the Shannon Dawson offense. It seems tough for me, even from Tyler's point of view, to want to hit that reset button and start all over.
Yeah, well, it to me, it would be highly unlikely. First of all, from the standpoint, it's not going to do anything plus or minus to, sway the pro scouts. They already know what he could do. They already know his arm strength. They all know his positives and negatives. And to me, it's going to upset the apple cart in Alabama. And you don't want to do that. I mean, they already have work really hard, and I watched their A game last week. They have a couple of quarterbacks that are on hand, and the kids rally behind them, and bringing in a new guy who has no knowledge, and and it just doesn't seem likely. That's not a Nick Saban move. That really is not a Nick Saban move. He's just too close to the to a situation where he understands what keeps harmony, and certainly he has a chance to lose the team. He really does.
Wow.
I mean, you just can't bring in somebody to a national powerhouse just overnight and all of a sudden say, well, here's a guy that's going to be playing quarterback for us. Forget about the young kids that we've groomed and promised that they'd have an opportunity to play, just like the last three guys. I mean, he's the type of guy that is not afraid to play freshmen. Tua stuck in over Jalen Hurts. Certainly Bryce Young, when he came to Alabama, kind of chased Bear Bryant's grandson away. So he wants to keep harmony, and the harmony would not be bringing in Tyler Van Dyke. I just don't see it. And if they would have been doing it, I think they would have done it before spring. So the kids would have been acclimated, and that whole 20-something days of spring practice would have meant something. And now you bring in somebody and they go, well, what was the offense that we were running under the two quarterbacks that were there? It just seems illogical. It really does. It doesn't seem a move that somebody like Nick Saban would make. It just doesn't.
Yeah, and you brought up Alabama's current quarterbacking talent. I mean, one thing that their room lacks is experience, but oozing with talent. Ty Simpson, who's got the most upside there, he's a former 5-star recruit. He's headed into his second year. I know he's the fan favorite to be the starter. Jalen Milroe, who's heading into his second year, his sophomore year, he was the backup last year. He's a former 4-star recruit. So I guess the only thing people could question out of the Alabama quarterback room is, coming up behind Bryce Young, their two returning quarterbacks only have one combined college start in between them. So they don't have the experience that Van Dyke has. But when it comes to the talent and potential, especially in the case of Ty Simpson, he's got a higher upside than Tyler Van Dyke. I mean, this is one of the best quarterbacks in the country coming out of high school a couple years ago.
Yeah, well, and Milroe, who started last year in the game and accounted for 363 yards and showed that he could run a 4.3 740, and he has a arm that last year I saw him throw it past 72 yards in the air. So, yeah, it does. It makes zero sense. It really does. I mean, to a program like that is pretty much in the mix again next year, top 4 team. Will start out at probably 2 or 3 to begin the year. It just sounds like something that it would be way, way, way out of character. And I think that the fans in Alabama would kind of like frown on that. They wouldn't. Why would you bring in a guy that nobody even knows? Yeah, Tyler Van Dyke had a lot of promise, but then they're going to start talking about the negatives from last year. He didn't really play very well. And, and why would we bring this in when we've kind of groomed these young quarterbacks? Just in the same way, like I said, Bryce Young didn't have any starts and they inserted him right away. So to me at Alabama, it's not the quarterback, it's all the pieces around him. And Alabama's always got a line that's a fortress, always has a running game that's as good as any. And they have 3 receivers returning, including Jacurri Brooks from Miami, Booker T. Washington, that are going to be special. Just don't see it. I don't see how the rumor would even have any wings. I don't even know who would have started something like that, but I bet you that that if Miami catches wind of it, they'll address it right away, because, in this day of NIL and big money, you never know what's going to happen. And certainly I don't think, but Tyler Van Dyke doesn't seem like the guy that's going to be running for money when he has an opportunity to, set a good foundation this year for a team that's going to be pretty good over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's all very well said. I mean, I think one of the things that got the rumor gaining a little bit of steam, I think, is the Tommy Rees connection, because Rees, when he was at Notre Dame, supposedly really liked Van Dyke, and now he's at Alabama. But everything you said makes total sense. When we come back, still got a lot more to come here with the man, the myth, the legend, Larry Blustein. I do want to talk with Blue about Miami's other 2 quarterbacks, just in case we do have to break glass in case of emergency. But big takeaways from spring football and the spring game. And Miami's got themselves a new defensive back in the class of 2024 coming in. We'll talk about Isaiah Thomas. Keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Something exciting, my friends, is coming to built.com on April 22nd. Woo, it's a couple days away. I don't have all the details yet, but the excitement is real, and it's something you won't want to miss. If you know how Built works, they have the most incredible protein bars in the world, and they do these amazing flavor drops with unreal flavors in limited quantity. So mark your calendars and make sure to head to built.com on Saturday, April 22nd to be one of the first to discover what all the hype is about. I cannot wait to see what the new flavor is going to be. If they've been taking my suggestions, because I've been sending Built emails for like the past year on the flavors that I want, hopefully it's a new Nutella bar. I'm wondering about that. Maybe a lava cake bar, maybe a tiramisu bar. These are some of the, I don't know if it's going to be any of those things. I'm just speculating, guys. I mean, who wouldn't want a lava cake bar or a Nutella bar? So I'm wondering what it's going to be, but make sure when you go to built.com and order your favorites, use promo code LOCKEDON15, and then you'll get 15% off your order. Be like me, because I love me some Built bars. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. And thank you to the everydayers who catch all of our episodes. We're going to have more coming up later today. I'm going to do an official welcome to the U for Isaiah Thomas. We're going to be talking with 2023 quarterback Max Lawrence out of Westland Hialeah, who's looking for a new home to play ball. We've got a lot coming up later today, and of course tomorrow here on Locked On Canes. But right now, we are talking with Larry Blustein. So, Blue, now, if Miami were to lose Van Dyke and push come to shove, neither of us think that's going to happen. Do they have enough in the quarter? Because obviously that's going to cost you wins. If you would lose Van Dyke, and unless you can go out and really make a big splash in the transfer portal, and the clock is ticking on that, if you have to stay in-house, no disrespect to Jacurri and Emory Williams, but losing Tyler Van Dyke would cost you wins, Blue. How do you feel about the rest of the room? Is anyone else between Jacurri and Emory ready to step up now?
No, that's it. Jacurri would be the guy next up because he's got the year of experience and started a game last year and against Georgia Tech did real well. But yeah, it's just such a drop-off right now. And it may not be that way over the next couple of years, but right now it's a huge drop-off. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke gives you the best chance to win. There's no doubt. Even when Jake Garcia was here, he gave you the best chance to win. And how ironic it all is now, if this should ever come to fruition, which I think is not going to happen, but Jake Garcia is now in Missouri, and he could have been this could have been his show, but I'm not even thinking about it because it just doesn't seem something that's logical. It makes it just, to me, it makes absolutely no sense. I mean, you sit back and think about it and I go, what benefit would it be for somebody like that? Because like I said, and I have people that I know at Alabama, which I'm going to contact later on today. But the thing is they're going to say the same thing. I mean, how can you, how can you take the balance of a program that is just in the mix every year, no matter who's behind? Bryce Young was really, really good, no doubt about it. But so was Tua, and so was Jalen Hurts, and we can go back. Everybody has played for him.
Mac Jones was great.
You're right, Matt Jones from Jacksonville Bulls, and it just doesn't make any sense. But to answer your question, if that would happen, I don't think Jacurri Brown is ready, for the big stage yet, but he'll have to be thrust into it. And believe it or not, you'll get an opportunity to see a couple of the freshmen because I just don't see. Yeah, it's hard to discuss because it makes zero sense to me. I mean, if it would have happened, it would have happened in April, early April or March or February. It just, you go through a spring and pretty much, with like you mentioned, with a new coordinator and setting the parameters. And I think that he knows that with the weapons that he'll have to work with in 2023, if I'm him, I'd be looking forward to it. He's got a lot of new faces. He showed the other day with that offensive line is going to be really, really good. Makes no sense.
All right, so let's look at everything else, all the good, and I want to stick with that quarterback room, Blue. And listen, I give you so much credit because going back about a year ago, maybe longer, you were one of the first people to tell me to watch out for Emory Williams back when he was at Milton High School.
Right.
Out there in the Florida Panhandle, and he's developing, Blue. I was so impressed the first time I saw the early enrollee freshman quarterback in spring practice, and he showed a lot of poise in the spring game. What's impressing you most about Emory?
His poise, which we knew, and as I always relate the story, the first time I saw him, he was in 10th grade. And he was at the Florida State camp. It was like a mega camp that a billion kids were at. And wow. I happened to have been off on the side talking to Coach Odell Higgins. And I said, Coach, who's that? And he says to me, he goes, I'm not real sure. I said, dang. I says, he's throwing a pretty good ball. And I says, he looks facially young. I went up to him and he goes, yeah, I'm in 10th grade and I come from Milton. And I said, wow. And then immediately I turned to my big time source up in the Panhandle, former Hurricane Ty Wise, who is, coaches in the area. His son goes to Pace up in the Panhandle. His son's another bear. Miami needs to get on. He's 6'5", 290, he's going to be a sophomore. But, and I had asked him, and he said, I watched him, and he says, he still needs improvement. And, and he says, I'll keep watching him. And then the next time I talked to him was last year. And he goes, I'll tell you what, he's a whole different character than he was as a 10th grader. He's real confident, throws the ball real well. He had a really good receiver last year too. But, I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be able to step in sooner than later.
I love to hear that. On the defensive side of the football, Blue, we will circle back to offense because there's a couple of other playmakers I want to talk about. But I couldn't go this long without talking about Hurricane Bain. Wearing that number 44. This is crazy because, Blue, all spring practice long, this wasn't just a one-night thing at the spring game. This guy is taking up permanent residence in the backfield. Like, he has been borderline unblockable, and people got a glimpse of that in the spring game where he was credited with 3 sacks. They're not going to be able to keep Bain off the field this year, Blue. He's going to end up playing a lot.
Yeah, a whole lot, if not starting.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you? You don't keep your Lamborghini parked in the garage. You just don't. You just can't have that situation. But yeah, no, he's been the dude, and that's why everybody covered him so much, just like they did Francis Mauigoa. And now you see why. This is a kid he's a man child as a freshman, and of that Polynesian heritage, and somebody who's, he's going to probably teach he and his brother are going to teach the team how to do the haka, and they'll have to be doing that before the games. And Bain he's just a man, and he's always been this way. And even though people kind of doubted him and said, well, he's not this or not that, right, he's everything is advertised. And, he's going to be in there, and it gives you strength, with him and Leonard Taylor and some of the other guys who I think that will step up their game. We didn't get a chance to see 11 players, 6-7 starters in the spring. Right. And that kind of gives you a little bit of a indication that Miami is going to be a whole lot better than people, gave them credit for, because I thought they played extremely well on both sides of the ball the other day. Yeah, they made mistakes. And I'll tell you a guy who stood out to me, and I think he's made major strides, and he's going to be a really, really good player, is Daryl Porter. Yes. If you look at the balls that he got beat on the other day, they were just right there. You couldn't have thrown a better ball to beat him twice, with Young, and then in the corner with Jacoby George. So I think guys like that who are stepping up and much needed at a much needed time. We already know Cam Kinchens is a freak of nature. And you got to remember, James Williams didn't play. You had a bunch. Jafari Harvey didn't play. Messidor and those guys like that. It's just so much to be happy about. And then you add guys like Bain, and you add guys like Mauigoa's brother, who's Francisco, who's, I mean, he
was excellent in the game.
Oh, he's the guy, and Wesley played sparingly, and and then I thought the secondary really has improved quite a bit, and I was just blown over. And I told Daryl's dad, who I've known ever since his days in high school at St. Thomas, I says, I'm thoroughly impressed. I really am. I watched him last year. I had a little bit of reservations, kind of timid, didn't throw his body in there, but this year he's changed. He's changed dramatically, and I think that's going to help the entire defense. But that pass rush, and once you get Leonard Taylor back, healthy, and players like that, I think things are gonna fall into place.
Want to get to, when we come back, a couple of the playmakers on the offensive side of the football, including early enrollee freshman who was out there making plays. Keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts, and available free on YouTube. And guys, make sure you continue the conversation with us. And we've been really busy with all the rumors and all the recruiting. And if you are part of our subtext community, we have an exclusive SMS chat for Locked On Canes. You've known about the last several Miami Hurricanes recruiting commits before they even committed. We've got great conversations, breaking news, practice observations, recruiting scoops. So I'm going to include a link in the show description below to join our subtext SMS chat community. You can do one-on-ones with me as well. I'm always answering questions on there. So the link to join our subtext SMS chat service is below. And Larry Blustein is with us now here on Locked On Canes. Blue, Ray Joseph made some big plays in that spring game, including the exclamation point at the end. He caught that touchdown and then put on the afterburners after catching that ball from Emory Williams. These are the types of athletes Miami needs to keep recruiting, because when we talk about the last couple of years, just not having enough big play threats, guys who can take it to the house on any play, Ray clearly provides that, and I believe Robbie Washington does as well. What did you see from those two in the spring game?
Yeah, same thing as you saw. And talking to Kevin Beard the week before when I was down there for the practice, the little scrimmage, he said the only thing that Ray is lacking right now is just the knowledge of reading college defenses. Yeah, because he's relying more on his speed now than he is on really the recognition, because it's a whole different story. And it's sort of like, I remember the story that John Vilma told me when he first got to Coral Gables, that as good as he was, the one thing that he had to learn is to learn how to tackle. He used to push all the time. And, in high school, you could push a kid down. But in college, it's not so much. So he had to learn how to wrap up. Well, that's what Ray's got to adjust himself to, because in high school, he could run away from people. He could do, things. He could turn the corner. But he's got to remember here at this next level, he's going to go up against an A&M and Clemson and North Carolina, defensive secondary kids that are big, that are as fast as he is. So he's got to be more of a technical guy and learn more technique. And I think that's why Kevin Beard makes so much difference, because the average wide receiver coach, oh yeah, he's just tearing it up, and he wouldn't give any negative input. And that's the one thing that makes Kevin so special, is because while you want to talk all these positives about what Ray brings to the table, you also have to understand that when things start going in the fall, that he's going to need more than just to be fast. He's going to be paired against some really good talent, but he's a guy who's so smart. Was top percentage of his graduating class, which didn't even graduate yet.
Right.
that's the greatest part in the world. You get guys like that, and they haven't even been to prom yet, and they're already in college. And that's those are the type of things that you love Robbie Washington too, because of his family background in the sport, and his dad, and who I used to watch at Killian, and you can't say enough about how he's like a sponge, and his brother's going to be the same way, at the linebacker spot. But because of his speed, and to me, those are the type of guys that, to me, I would definitely, I know that they have other plans for kickoffs, but to have Ray and Washington back there, holy mackerel, all they need is a seam and bow. You don't need experience. That's where you need speed. And, everybody that Miami brought in the upper echelon, including Mauigoa and Okunlolo and those guys, they're going to be in there. They're going to be making an impression in the depth chart to begin, and maybe by the end of the year, they may be starting.
No doubt. So last thing here, Larry, and I know I disrespected this young man because there's so much else going on. We're going to give him plenty of love throughout the day because I like Miami's latest verbal commit, Isaiah Thomas, who was just given his 4th star yesterday by Rivals, and I think he's going to be getting 4 stars from other services soon. 6'3", 200-pound safety. He's from Canada. He's at Clearwater Academy International, which does such a great job finding talent all over the world to come in. And Blue, I like big body defensive backs, and he uses his size and his range very well. What can you tell me about the newest Hurricanes commit, Isaiah Thomas?
Yeah, I agree. Saw him last year, when we watched the Clearwater International Academy, who lined up against some pretty good teams. They played Lakeland last year. They've, it's just tough for them because they're an independent team like IMG, where IMG could get more games and have probably the finances to go to California and to New Jersey. They don't, so they have to get as many games as possible. Yeah, big body kid, over 200, agile type of player, somebody who I think is going to fit in extremely well. And just over the last week with Miami bringing in a couple of those kids like Dylan Day, who I think that people are really, really going to be surprised at how talented he is. Comes from a really good program in Southern Lab in Baton Rouge that has produced a lot of really good talent over the years. I think they kind of struck gold, and everybody keeps dwelling on the 3 stars. I think the 3 stars on Juan Minaya and Chris Wheatley Humphrey. Yeah. I think that they're because people never really looked at these guys. I mean, all of a sudden Miami's pulling them out and they're 3 stars, and everybody goes, oh, well, they're settling for 3 stars. These guys are a whole lot better. You'll see, and the fans will see that the star system is flawed in a lot of ways. It really is. And it's because you don't get a chance. Most of these rankings are done now, and that means they're done in shorts and T-shirts, because not everybody sees these kids. No one's going over to the Clearwater National Academy to see these kids, not in a game. It's just there's so many other things, so many other talented kids to see. How many people, and this is really, and I had this discussion yesterday with Chris's dad, Rob Humphrey, used to start at South Broward. This is, how many guys watched Chris last year? I want to show of hands. Nobody watched him in a game. He played for South Broward. They weren't really a team that anybody wanted to see. So who really saw him in any game action? All they're doing is going off of tape. They don't know what type of character the kid has. I happened to stumble on him in 2 games last year. One was a game that Bill Hawkins' jersey was being retired by South Broward, and he carried the ball 10 times for 190 yards and showed, how explosive he is and, what type of player he is. And but that's what I'm trying to say, Alex. And I get angry because of the fact that all these people go to bank on these people who hand out these stars, but they're coming from people who really never saw these guys. No more than you or your next door neighbors watched them on film. And you both can tell that, oh, yeah, he can run, or yeah, he can catch or tackle. But you don't know the full package until you're at a game and watching what he does. And, Teddy Bridgewater perhaps is the best illustration of that. When Teddy was a sophomore and junior, while he was out of the ball game and the defense was on the field, he never really even bothered talking to receivers. He was all by himself. And it took one of the coaches over there to say, hey, you got to show a better leadership to the team, and things changed. And I think that's the process of recruiting that anybody could tell if a kid could run the ball or pass or tackle, but to show what he's all about as a teammate and how much character he has, and how he's learning and always communicating, and those are things you don't see. And the Mania kid is the same way. I mean, I watched a lot on him. I think that this kid was one of those type of steel guys because people don't know about him, and we certainly know that Judd Anderson, who I liken a lot to Jack Allison, who played at Miami, just from the standpoint of how he throws the ball. But this is a kid who's 6'6", and he has and he really is. I was talking to his coach yesterday, and the upside that he has, he said the kid is just an amazing football talent and a great teammate. See, and that to me outweighs anything that a lot of these people look at. So to fans that watch your show and listen to your stuff all the time, and there's a million that do, and I know they're very loyal to what you do. Be smart. Don't listen to what everybody's telling you in a negative way until you actually see these people, for yourselves. And that's why, I've been doing this so long, because of the fact that I go and see. I'm not somebody who'll sit behind a computer and make a judgment, because you can't make a full judgment, because that's something that anybody can do.
That's why we value your insight so much. And you were just preaching the gospel there, right? And I was having an argument with a Florida State fan yesterday who's like, 3-star Mario gets another 3-star. It's like, okay, the star system, it's flawed, like you said, but it's also for fans, right? And I'm not saying 5-star players can't be great, because I believe in the 5 stars Miami brought in last year's class, or this year's class, technically 2023. But if you think good coaches are strictly going by stars when they evaluate players, that's a recipe to get fired. That's not the criteria that they need
100%.
to see. They need to see, can these guys really play regardless of how many stars they have? Like, they're not going to rely on the nerds behind computers who are like, hey, you shouldn't bother to recruit this guy because he doesn't have 4 or 5 stars. They have to go by their own evaluations, and they also have to decide if these players can fit in their specific system. So
exactly. And that's exactly what I said. When you take a look at some of the recruits that they have, and a perfect example is because of the fact that Dylan Day plays in such an impressive area that put out guys like Ed Reed and people like that. Come on, be mindful of the competition that these guys are playing, and understand that they're kind of dominating in that level of play. So imagine that they're going to translate to the next level. And the same thing goes for, there's a couple of guys that are being heavily recruited and talked about, but they are not even getting it done in their own high school area. They're just big and strong and fast, but they're not productive. And to me, as I said, while everybody's ripping the kid Flag the last 2 years, he's not this, he's not that. He was Miami's leading tackler 2 years in a row. So, it's all about productivity. And, you could have the 6'5", 270-pound kids that do nothing. But give me the 60. Give me a shorter version. Give me a Warren Sapp, who was, a guy who, and that's a lot who we're going to look at Bain as. He's going to get to the point where he's going to be so disruptive, they're going to have to hold him out of practice, because he's just not going to let them he's not going to let him accomplish some stuff. And that's what Warren Sapp was as a junior and a senior. Wow. He was just so dominant that they had to kind of hold him out of place just so they could get things done.
That's incredible. Well, guys, make sure for all this great insight, you follow Larry Blustein at Larry Blustein on Twitter. Blue, I can't thank you enough for the time. Enjoy the rest of your week.
You too. Thanks, Alex.
We'll talk to you guys again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.